welcome this afternoon. Thanks for being here. I would anticipate by most of the names that I see, you know that I'm Don Wittruba, the Executive Director for MASB. Really appreciate you tuning into these webinars that we started now. I guess more than a year ago, we've put these together, trying to put together topics that are important to all of you as board members, and at risk of trying to move your mind away from all of the kind of tough things that you're dealing with in your district, we're trying to bring up an issue that is also important, and maybe will distract you a bit from all of the conversation about masks and vaccines and CRT and other things, because if all we do is focus on that, and I've said it to you in emails, it detracts from the work that you really need to get done as school district board members. I will say first, thank you for everything that you're doing out in your communities. I've been in this for 24 years, and I've never seen a more difficult time for school board members and for superintendents. And so from the bottom of my heart, I really do thank you for your service. Keep your heads up, keep working hard. You're in it for the right reasons. The kids in your school districts appreciate it. We just need to be in a place where we keep good board members around, and I've started to see articles where we're seeing board members step down from their roles. And I understand and don't begrudge individuals in that space at all. But I hope that we don't see that happen regularly, just because we have good board members out there, and I want to see all of you remain in your seats if possible. Today, the topic that we want to talk about is legislative action, both what's going on in the legislature and what you can do to move things forward and how you can create coalitions. This is important work of a school district. It's important work of a school community. You can't do it just as a school board. It has to be done on a broader scale than just you. And as much as we get frustrated by the legislature, we really need to keep this in the front of our minds. When we think of the amount of federal money that has come in recently, when we think about the policy issues that are being discussed at the Capitol, if you as school board members and superintendents aren't weighing in some ways, people would say you get what you deserve if you let the legislature go about doing their business unfettered and not held accountable by all of you that they impact. So I am not going to be on much today. I'm actually going to sign off and attend another meeting, but I have Jen Smith, our Director of Government Relations, who is no stranger to any of you, and DeShandria Bedingfield, who runs our Grassroots Advocacy program, really to talk to you about what's happening at the Capitol and also how you can best impact that. It's, to me, essential work, and I'm biased, of course, as a long time recovering lobbyist, but this work at the Capitol is important. We have a great team here at MASB furthering the agenda, but we need the voices behind us. And so I wanted to kind of highlight this as an issue with Jennifer and talk about why this still has to be a matter that is important to school board members, even in spite of everything else that you're dealing with right now. So that's enough from an introduction perspective. I am going to turn it over to Jen and DeShandria and let them have the show today, and just thank all of you again for tuning in today. And we'll see you again next month, or I will see you again next month. You will be here with MASB staff the rest of today. So Jen?
All right, thank you, Don. Share my screen here. So, well, Don said that we're going to take away from talking about masks and that. We're going to start with a legislative update, and it's going to include those words. So, you know, if you don't want to hear it, that's okay. I understand. So what we want to do today is sort of tell you what's going on at the Capitol, how to get that information, other than just listening to us talk at you. And we're also going to talk about quick and simple ways to advocate for K-12 using the GAP program, just building those coalitions. And then we're going to highlight our behind the scenes event, and hopefully we can get you all to register when we're done here. But let's start with what's going on. today. Today, actually, they're working on the state budget. So the school aid budget was done in June, as you all know, but the rest of the state budget is not done, and their deadline for that is September 30th. What we're hearing is the goal is to work late into the night today and possibly tomorrow to pass the final budget. We don't know what's in it. They've been very tight-lipped about what's there. One thing we do know, though, is that we were successful in getting language in the MDE budget that will reimburse board members for board training done by a certified vendor and that meets certain criteria. So obviously MASB will apply to MDE to be one of those certified vendors. And then if you take one of the classes that fits the criteria, which a lot of it is our 100 level classes, you would be able to be reimbursed, your district would be able to be reimbursed up to $100. They put about $260,000 is what I'm hearing into that line item. And while that may not seem like a lot, getting it in the budget is a huge win. We've been trying to do something with this for so long. As many of you know, board training has been a legislative priority for years. And so we're really excited to see that happen. Big thanks to Senator Schmidt for being our champion on this and keeping it in the budget. We'll know more about the budget probably tomorrow. And if there's anything else affecting schools, we'll be sure to let you know in News from the Capitol on Friday. Seat time and attendance requirements. Actually, before I get into that, I want to say if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will try to answer them as we go. So you can just use that chat function at the bottom of your screen to put the questions in. So seat time and attendance requirements. This has been something that we actually have been talking about since last spring. And now as we head into the fall, it's become a bigger deal. So as you know, in the school aid budget, they took out all of the flexibility that was there around counting kids and around the 75% threshold, so that if you had less than 75%, you could still count the day. There were ways to count your kids if they were virtual. All of that went away in the budget that we passed in June, and we're back to pre-pandemic language. So what we've been talking to MDE and the legislature about is, what do we do in the scenario where a district shuts down because they have less than 25% attending that day? And whether that's due to a COVID outbreak or just your usual attendance issues plus some sick kids, it doesn't really matter what the problem is. How are we going to deal with that? We've already seen numerous districts across the state close for health reasons. You only have 6 days, and we don't want to be dealing with this in March, April, May, as you're trying to end the school year, as we've done with some of the snow day conversations. So MDE did put out a memo, which we have shared out through Dashboard and through News from the Capitol, that talks about how to count your kids, how to deal with virtual learning. But there are some holes that we're still looking at. One is, what is 100% virtual? Does that mean 100% virtual while you are quarantined? Or does that mean 100% virtual because your parents have decided not to put you in the classroom at all for the year? And then the other piece, which I believe is coming out today or tomorrow, deals with what we have referred to as packet learning. Those kids that don't have internet in their home. And so you're delivering packets or we're getting paperwork to them. So they're still learning, but they don't have internet. They can't log into a class and say they're here. How do we count those? Under the first memo, it said, call MDE and we'll talk about it. But we have talked to them since and said, there's a lot more kids out there like that than you think. You don't want them all calling MDE. So they're supposed to be putting out that guidance to make it a little clearer today or tomorrow. In Senate Bill 600 to 603, this was a hearing that we had in the Senate last week. These bills limit 600 and 601 deal with schools, 602, 603 deal with DHHS. And for schools, it says that you shall not discriminate against a student who does not have a vaccination. You shall not require a vaccination to participate in school activities of any kind. Discrimination includes things like sitting in a different spot or having to mask if you are unvaccinated. And then if you create a mask mandate, you must have a parental opt-out or you may not create the mandate, and you may not require masks or vaccinations to attend a school board meeting. On the DHHS side, it says they shall create no rules that require masks or vaccinations for any school-related activity. So MASB opposes these bills because it takes away the decision-making from the districts. These are driven as parent choice bills. And we understand that parents want to be able to choose, but we also understand that these decisions are being left to boards and health departments to make in the best interest of their kids. And we think that that should stay there. The state should not be outlining what a district policy should say. And going forward, the MDHHS stuff just deals with a pandemic. And we don't believe we should be limiting the powers of our health department, our state health department, to react to a pandemic. So we have opposed these bills. They moved very quickly on a party line vote out of committee last week. The only testimony they heard was in support from parents and from the bill sponsors. And now they're on the Senate floor. We don't know what their fate looks like on the Senate floor yet. And they moved so fast last week, we haven't done a lot of follow-up on them. But those are moving. We do think if they make it to the governor's office, we do not believe she will sign them. So part of this is it feels like that push-pull between the legislature and the governor. They're trying to say they're doing something and she's going to say, but not that. And they're going to say, we tried and you said no. And so we think that this is part of that push-pull. But those bills are moving right now. On the federal side, ESSER 3 equalization, you may have heard about this from us over the last few weeks, but back in June, we passed the ESSER 3 money. We finally appropriated that, and it had to be appropriated on the basis of Title 1A, so out through the Title 1A formula. The difference in districts and their per pupil amount in Michigan was something like between 0 and 13,000 per pupil. So in the budget, we added a section, the legislature added a section, but governor signed it, that would have allowed those districts that were getting less than $1,093 per pupil to receive that amount. And the legislature did that with the ESSER 3 discretionary funds, and it's about $365 million. Since then, they asked the U.S. Department of Ed if this was okay, and the U.S. Department of Ed has come back and said no. So these payments are in limbo now. We know that your budgets, if you are one of these districts, I think it's about a third of our districts. This is a lot of money for some districts. It's millions for many districts. And you probably have budgeted based on the fact that the state budget said you were going to receive this money. So the department and the governor's administrative team have been talking to the Department of Ed. We've been talking to Congress people. Many other ed organizations have been talking to our Congress people and our senators, trying to explain what this is doing. The Department of Ed said that this money is meant to be spent on at-risk kids, of those who were impacted the most by the pandemic. And our argument in response is that there are at-risk kids in those districts that aren't receiving much money. And the pandemic has affected all districts. You've all seen costs. So this conversation is still going on. We have not heard back from the feds to answer the concerns that MDE and the governor's office took to them. I would suggest in any meeting with your congressperson, or pick up the phone and give them a call, let them know how this affects your district and that you need their help in leaning on the department and on the Biden administration to make this change and allow us to spend the money that way. We don't want to go back in and reopen the school aid budget, especially right now. We don't want to see additional restrictions put on any of the dollars that are in there that we were able to get through in June with no additional restrictions. So we have a lot of nervousness around reopening the school aid budget. The easiest way to do that is for the feds to change their mind and say, or loosen their interpretation and say this is an okay use of that money. And then finally, this is back again, virtual attendance at board meetings. So as you know, currently you can only attend virtually and vote if you are deployed in the military, you are under an emergency order in your area, or you have a medical condition. Those go away December 31st. And the only reason you can participate virtually in a board meeting is if you are deployed in the military. We are going to start those conversations now, because we feel that this pandemic is not going to end December 31st, not with the way the Delta variant has been acting and the way we've seen numbers. So we would like that medical exemption to stay in there, so that if a board member is quarantined or isolating, they would still be able to participate in their board meeting. I don't know what the odds are of getting this changed. We have been talking about this over and over and over again. They have to keep moving the sunset on this. And if they would have just listened to us in the first place and put the sunset way out, we wouldn't have to do this, but we have to do this over and over. So we're going to have those conversations with the legislature. We're hoping to get a champion on it. And as soon as we do, we'll certainly put it out for all of you to push on a certain bill. But again, this is something that they're going to need to hear from their board members to know it's an issue, because we dealt with this before. And I heard a lot that, well, my board hasn't told me it's a problem. And so even though we were there on behalf of boards statewide, those individual legislators need to hear from their boards. So this is going to be something we're working on going forward to try to get a little more flexibility into the new year as we hopefully see the pandemic wind down, but we hope that last year. So we want to be prepared for whatever comes next dealing with this pandemic. Are there any questions on any of those before I move on, or other issues that I didn't mention that you are wondering about? All right, well, while you're thinking, I will move on to where can you find this information? So always pick up the phone, give us a call, drop us an email. We're happy to answer your questions. But if you don't receive these things in your email, you need to sign up for our News in the Capitol. Hopefully everyone on this email, on this call is getting it, but it is separate from our IMAS database, from our membership database. We keep it separate because we have non-members in the advocacy database. So even if you're receiving dashboard and all of our communications, which obviously you are because you're here, you may not be receiving News in the Capitol if it didn't transfer over properly, or there's a glitch when we transfer the data. So if you haven't seen a News in the Capitol in your inbox in the last few weeks, it comes out on Friday, let us know and we will double check. Sometimes it's just that an email got turned off somehow, or we will give you the link to sign in. And you can also find that link at masb.org/evakit. And the picture there shows you what you're looking for. That's on the right-hand side of the page. It says become an evakit. You click join and you fill in all of your information. Make sure you click the email opt-in button at the bottom. We ask that you register yourself because our advocacy system is linked to you. So if we send out one of those legislative alerts, when you click take action, it takes you to your representative or senator because it connects you by your address. So we ask you to put in your home address, the best email, and then click that email opt-in and you'll be on your way. So that's the easiest way online. But what else can you do as a board and as a group? And I'm going to have DeShandria tell you more.
Hi, so another tool that you can use for your advocacy toolkit is to be a part of the Grassroots Advocacy program. So here at the Michigan Association of School Boards, I run the Grassroots Advocacy program, which was a board initiative to get our board members to engage and advocate on what was happening in the legislature affecting you guys' districts. MASB does not have a political action committee, so we thought that the grassroots approach would be beneficial to our members, and obviously not just our members, but their communities as well. And this is a part of my work of helping you guys engage your community members. And just to tell you a little bit about the Grassroots Advocacy program, it is a free program for our members, so you do not pay. Pre-pandemic, I will say that well, I go on the road and do grassroots advocacy workshops with our members. So those are usually 2 sessions that I do. So you would sign up using the grassroots advocacy link that Stacey B will drop in the chat. So you would have these conversations at your board table. And then also I would help you guys try to build your advocacy 101 skills. And I get a lot of questions of what's the difference between our CBA Advocacy 108 class and the Grassroots Advocacy program. I will say the biggest difference is the Grassroots Advocacy program is tailored to your specific district and your specific community needs. And also you have a coalition building impact at the end of it. So it is Advocacy 101, but there is definitely more engagement on the building a bigger capacity for legislative impact also. And like I said, it is free. If you definitely have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat about the program. So far, I have hit every MASB region except for Region 1. So if you are in the UP, I have yet to do a grassroots advocacy training with you all. And I would And I will say, I also, and not just, we wanted to do a regional approach so that I wasn't going to every single school district in the state, of course, but just having a regional approach obviously builds higher capacity. So if you were interested in doing grassroots advocacy workshop, we would ask you to also invite your neighboring districts and also include your ISD, because obviously they would have maybe just a wider network and have the capacity to invite all the neighboring districts underneath that ISD. I've also done trainings through County School Board Association, so CASPAs as well, have requested me out to do different engagements. And I've also spoke about the program at different legislative breakfasts also. So a district will invite their senator representative and also have me there to kind of help build those relationships also with legislators, which is a part of the Grassroots Advocacy program as well. So a part of it, like I said, is also teaching our board members to be super advocates, but also teaching you guys the methods to involve others. And this is just a little bit of what I go through in a workshop, but I'll just putting your brain of who you can involve. Obviously, staff and administrators, we would like you to obviously have your superintendent. And if you do this at the ISD level, have your ISD superintendent involved as well in the conversations. I have done a couple of workshops with local PTA members, and I can say that it definitely helped in a sense that, one, it helps the PTA and the board build those relationships. And it also gives the PTA and community members a way of seeing what you guys do at the board table, and seeing the decisions that you make and the policies that you have to go through. So it definitely helps in a capacity relationship building area. And also involving students, especially in those policies that affect the students like firsthand. Having that student impact and having that student perspective is definitely something that'll be beneficial to your coalition. And then the last slide was more of I would say the groups that you see in your buildings, right, on a like day-to-day basis. But this is like to think of something that's wider and more broad. So these are people that you can think of. So you think of your local business leaders, you can think of your local chamber, because I mean, more and more that you see that a lot of business leaders are getting more involved in what's happening in K-12 education. So you'll see that. And also just thinking about local nonprofits that you can partner with. And I'll say the pandemic has definitely been a good example of how innovative that communities are becoming. And, you know, just the capacity that we've had trying to remedy some of the issues. And I kind of like to see that innovation go forward just beyond the pandemic, of course, but it definitely gives you a sense of people in your region and community that you can reach out to. So here's some tips for like your local board that you can do. And maybe your board is not at the space of building, you know, a grassroots coalition at this time, but these are little things, especially throughout the pandemic. You know, I wasn't able to do workshops in person, of course, but this was something that I thought of that could help our board members just keep the momentum going and also keep that advocacy space like forefront in their mind. So, and this is something that a lot of districts that I've worked with have implemented just along the way. So designating a board member, and this is not someone that you have to hire or anyone part-time, just designating a board member, or it could be more than just one who wants to become an advocacy liaison. And this can be the person who, you know, reads MASB updates or read reliable, accurate education articles at your board meetings, just always keeping in the forefront of what you all can do at your board table. And also engaging on the legislation that, you know, you hear about and giving updates about. And I will also say that we're talking about grassroots and, you know, building from the ground up, but there are that, and what I've learned throughout this space is that there are sometimes committees or work groups that you guys already have that could transition into the grassroots space. I know there are some districts who have equity committees and maybe they want to revamp or try to bring that back to the forefront. And they've tried to have a more grassroots approach. So also while you're thinking about also building this grassroots coalitions, but also I want you guys to keep in mind that there maybe is a system in place already or a group in place already that you guys can kind of coordinate with, or even just like I said, revamp in a way to have more of a grassroots K through 12 education like approach to it as well. And so how to reach others, and this is like Another one goes back to like reaching beyond just the people that you see in your district. So obviously word of mouth, personal connections go a long way, especially, of course, you all have, your everyday jobs along with being a board member, but think about who you know personally in the community that you would like to engage with and or that you would think be a great fit to be a part of a grassroots coalition. And they don't necessarily have to be someone in the education space. They could be someone in the mental health space, someone just in different realms that you all deal with on a day-to-day basis while being a board member. Social media, especially Facebook, is a great way to start like a grassroots approach. And also I'll say social media is a great way to share information in a faster and easier way, maybe than sending the email, than just sharing on your Facebook page or, trying to build capacity and build outreach that way. And also, like Jen said earlier, MASB, we do send out action alerts if there's like, a piece of legislation that's moving fast. And feel free always, and I do this with the grassroots workshops and the people that I've met so far along the way, I always send them our action alerts. Not that they're not already signed up, but I just always send it to say, if you have any questions, please contact me, or can you also share this with whoever you want to? So it's kind of building that capacity also and share it with whoever you want. So I'll definitely say our action alerts can definitely go a long way, and also like building that, helping you reach out to other people just beyond the education space. Also, emails and newsletters are a great way to basically try to build that capacity and reach out to other people beyond your district and work with other local organizations. Of course, like I said, the pandemic was a great example, but maybe there are other local entities that you can think about in your community that'd be great to partnership with. And I'm going to turn it over to Jen.
Okay. So in order to do all this stuff, you have to contact your legislator. So why is that important? Why is building relationships what we keep talking about over and over and over again? And it's so when you make that call, they know who you are and they trust you and they know that you're calling as a board member from your district and you know what's going on the ground. So how do you build those relationships? Now that we're back face to face, you see more of these events happening, but most legislators have coffee hours or local office hours in their district. You can sign up for their emails and they'll send you their email newsletter and you'll know when those things are happening. Talking to them, and not just when you want something. Call them to say thank you, call them to let them know something's going on, or just, this bill is coming up, can they tell you more? Find reasons to communicate with them. And if you run into them, be friendly. Introduce yourself again, face to face. Just keep making that contact and offer your expertise. As I said in the beginning, you are the expert. You know what's going on in your district. And so when you can offer to find answers for them, specific examples of what they're looking for, numbers, especially when we're talking budget, when you can get those things to them and they're reliable and you're consistent in your responses, it builds that relationship and it builds trust on their end to then call you when they need something. And get to know their staff. Never underestimate the power of meeting with a staffer. Especially in term limits, that staffer may be your next rep. The staff also is the one who is making sure the representative or senator is where they need to be, when they need to be there, and know what's going on. And so while the senator may be on 4 or 5 committees, they may not know the details of something unless it's on their committee. And if they're not on education, you got to lean on that policy staffer. So never underestimate the power of staff. And if you're told, well, you can't meet with the legislator, but you could meet with their chief of staff or their legislative person, take the meeting. And building the relationship with the staff will lead to the same thing. The staff will call you to say, okay, we have this ed bill up. What's going on in your district? How does it apply? Too often we tend to think, oh, we didn't get the elected, they pushed us off on staff. And you really need to change your thinking, especially now. Some of those staffers, a lot of those staffers have been around longer than the legislators. And so they've got historical knowledge the legislator's never going to have. And the legislators tend to lean on their staff. So the more that you know the staff, the more you can share with the staff, you can, hopefully as you get to know them, trust the information you're giving them is working its way to the elected's ear. So when you talk to them, be knowledgeable. Don't make up an answer. Be willing to say, I don't know, let me get back to you. Know what bill you're talking about, where it's at in the legislative process, because they will ask. So if you are at least know those simple things, they'll know that you've done your homework before you came in. And that's what you want them to feel, like you came prepared for that meeting. And using your own words, you have stories from your district that have to do with any of the legislation you're meeting with your legislator about. Tell that story. You don't have to use names, you don't have to use specifics, but tell that story. Make it real, make it personal, because those constituents of yours are constituents of theirs, and they know that. You're an elected official, same as they are. So if you're telling them what your constituents are seeing, doing, feeling, hearing, they're going to appreciate that and they're going to respond to it better. And saying thank you. One question when I teach 108 is always, how many people here have been told thank you for what you did as a board member versus how many times have you been yelled at or criticized? And especially over this last year, I bet that scale has really tilted. They will remember you saying thank you. They'll remember that you're paying attention to everything they do, not just the bad. And that makes a difference too, because if you think about the people you want to talk to, it's those people who recognize the good, not just the bad. So saying thank you always helps. If it's for a vote, if it's for taking a meeting, if it's for introducing a bill, whatever the case may be sure to say thank you. And legislators can be influenced. I know we think they can't, that they all come in with their minds made up, but that's not true. And a great example is one that all of you helped create with House Bill 4167, which was a school inspection bill. There were multiple sponsors on that bill. We were told the bill isn't moving, and then all of a sudden it's scheduled for a vote. MASB and MASA sent out their action alerts. Phone calls are going to all of these offices, and pretty soon word starts getting back to us that sponsors are pulling off the bill because now they've heard from their districts and they're hearing why this bill is a problem, not a solution. And by the end of that day, the bill was yanked off the agenda for that day. The next day it was referred back to committee where we don't expect to see it again. That's the power of your voice. When you talk to your representative and tell them exactly how that bill influences you and your district, that's what changes minds. So advocating in the virtual world. We are getting back to some in person, but some people are much more comfortable with the virtual setting. And we still have meetings as we schedule them. We're asked, do you want to meet in person or do you want to meet on Zoom? So those can still happen. There are some reps and senators, I will be perfectly honest, will not take a Zoom meeting anymore, but most will do either. So if you don't want to be in person or you don't want to make the trip to Lansing, this opens up the world for you. It's one of the silver linings of the pandemic. You can call and offer to do these Zoom meetings to still have that face-to-face contact. Committee meetings are always streamed online. You can find them through the House and the Senate websites. It'll show you what's being shown that day. And if you miss one, they're archived and you can watch them again so that you can watch those meetings. Many committees are still allowing virtual testimony so you could participate without having to go as well. And inviting your legislator to virtual events. It's the same as inviting them to an in-person event. Have them come, have them participate, have them be able to see and hear your district and your community. You can keep updated on what's going on with Facebook and Twitter, both MASB's page, but also your personal representative. Most of them have Twitter accounts, not all. And most of them have Facebook accounts, not all. And then the level to which they update those is definitely dependent on, I would say, probably the tech skills of the legislator, but also just their comfort with Twitter. But it is a great way to find out what's going on. What is your legislator doing? Where are they going to be where you could meet them? Twitter is a great spot for that. And then there's always the email. There's always a phone. And as you collect those cell phone numbers, as you get to know your legislators, you can text. Text is so influential right now, especially when you can't be there to lobby. So the more you can communicate with your legislator, build that level of trust and swap cell phone numbers, now you have a direct link to your legislator. And of course, you can still do the in-person meetings. That is always an option, but it's sort of nice to know that if you don't want to make the trip, the weather is bad, or you're just not comfortable coming down here, virtual has become a definite option now, whereas it wasn't prior to the pandemic.
All right, and now I'll just give you some information about how to sign up for the Grassroots Advocacy Program. So if you go to masb.org/grassroots, you can sign up. And also it'll give you more detail, I would say, information about the Grassroots Advocacy Program. And you kind of also, there is a video that we just created. So if you watch the video, you definitely grasp the concept of what the Grassroots Advocacy Program is. And just to go through how it works, pretty much will be, we do this in 2 steps. And when I was brainstorming this program, the first step is usually I would come in person to your board and do an advocacy training, also teach you the skills to basically, one, advocate in the legislature, but also give you the tools necessary to go out to your specific community groups or different people in your area to basically bring them into the Grassroots Coalition. And so that's basically why we did 2 different workshops. And also the first workshop is usually, like I said, sometimes it's your PTA and your board, sometimes it's your superintendent and your board and whoever so sometimes it can kind of flow. But also the second workshop is pretty much who you guys want there. So if you feel like there is an organization that you want to partner with in your community, you can bring them into the second workshop. It is definitely, like I said, the Grassroots Advocacy Program is specialized to your district, specifically to your area. And like I said, I've had great success with having a lot of collaborative PTA meetings also with the board. And also in these conversations, while you're even taking this back to your local board, please include your superintendent. We want them to know what's going on. We want them to know that you all are trying to be super advocates, of course, but also that you guys want to build greater capacity in the community in the education space. So please include your superintendent. And also, if you have any questions, or maybe you feel like, I don't know if this is coalition building is right for me for my district at the time. Also, like I said, there are steps that you can also take. And like I said, it's specialized to your district and to your area that you all can take to basically move towards those steps, right? And then, like I said, with this program, I come to you all, and I know sometimes it's hard for you guys to come to Lansing or maybe come to our workshops or the events that we have. But also, like I said, this is definitely a program that's fit for you. Please send me any questions or call me or email me if you have any specific information. And if you even feel like maybe your board has already done a grassroots workshop, I mean, maybe they just done the first portion and then they're, starting to ramp up for the second one. So if you feel like you don't know, like if your district has already started, definitely feel free to reach back out to me with any questions that you have.
So now we want to hear about your story. I know some of you on here have had long relationships with your legislators. If you can give us those examples and how you built them, that would be fantastic. We want to know how you've approached your successful meetings. Who has cell phone numbers? Who's used that text option to get a hold of them right away? And then if any of you have done the GAP program, we'd like to hear about that too. So if you have any of these examples, we'd love to have you unmute your mic and tell us. And I'm going to stop sharing for now so that we can all see. And some of you that I know well, I will call on because I know you have a story. So is there anyone that has an example or something that they could share with fellow members on your personal experience and how it worked for your board? Shirley, I think I saw you put your hand up.
Yes, you did. I do have a personal number for my Congresswoman, and anytime we have a problem, or sometimes I'll call her and tell her, look, I need your help. And she usually 9 times out of 10, she always helps. And it is significant to my board.
Fantastic. Mark, Katz, I'm going to make you my guinea pig. You've been doing advocacy for a long time. What advice do you have?
Yeah, a lot of it is just developing those personal relationships with the legislators. And you really hit on something so important, Jennifer, that it's not just talking to them when you want something. It's really being able to have ongoing conversations. As an example, we were in Washington, D.C. last week for the intermediate school district advocacy sessions. And even though we weren't able to meet with all of our legislators, and none of them did want to meet in person, we met with staff from Senator Peters, from Senator Stabenow's office. We met with Congresswoman Lawrence, actually with the Congresswoman, and we met with Congressman Levin's staff and Lee Slotkin's staff. And a lot of it was just saying thank you, because most of them do agree with all of the issues the way that we do. But it's really that reinforcement. And it was so nice because we've seen some of those aides so many times that they know us, we know them, and we're able to be real honest with them. And even though they're going to say, we can't always agree with you, they're willing to listen and at least take into consideration the thoughts that we're bringing to them.
Thanks, Mark. Deb, I see your hand up.
Yes, hi everybody, thank you. May I share a personal story that I picked up Sunday?
Absolutely.
All right, and this is Sunday, I was at an event and there were several elected officials there, to include State Senator Rosemary Bear. And I'm part of an organization with Senator Bear, and she literally said, and I always focus on what's going on with school boards, and she said that she has been hosting small group phone calls with boards in her area so they can talk through some of the current stresses that they are facing. And she didn't have to tell me that, but because she is one of my neighbor districts, when she told me that, I could figure out, well, I know what her geography is. So here was an example where local boards reached out to Senator Bear and said, they need some help with the local stresses that are going on. And I do have a follow-up question if that would be appropriate, but I thought others might like to hear that story.
Yes, we've heard that too about Senator Bear, that she's holding these meetings, and that is so good of her to do and great to participate in. What's your question, Deb?
Well, actually, I started the conversation with Senator Bear. She does serve Greater West Bloomfield, and that's where I hang out in my volunteer life. And I can't help but hear, are there opportunities in advocacy, especially reaching out to community-based organizations, to turn some of that energy inward to support local school boards who really could need some love right now. So I have to say that when Senator Bear told me that, I said, I'm going to tell everybody I know that you're doing that, because our elected boards, all of you, need some love right now. And Senator Bear is doing her part. So it makes me wonder, might there ever be an opportunity for the grassroots advocacy conversation to even look inward, because it breaks my heart to think about what is going on now. And so in my volunteer life, outside of my working as a consultant at MASB, that's the space that I hang out in, especially with lots of women who are seeking ways to be stronger and more powerful in their space.
I do think that as we talk about these grassroots coalitions, that is one way that they could benefit a district, is you would have a network of supporters. And like you said, Deb, you've never needed them more.
Absolutely.
The negative voices are so loud, and in most cases, they're not the majority. So as you're building these coalitions, that's one of the ways it can help, is that you would have third-party validators that the board is doing a good job. The board is making the best decisions they can in light of what's going on. And that is important. We try to say it all the time, but we get drowned out a lot. So I would say that is a benefit of these grassroots ideas, that as you reach out to people, you build those relationships, you've got them on the same page when you're talking about legislation. Why not ask them as well? Like, could you say something? You know, we had a bad board meeting last night. Could you help us say something? You know, we've got a big board meeting coming up tonight. Could someone come? Those would be options you would have because you've built those relationships.
Jan, thanks for saying that. I know that there will be people in the community willing to say yes, that they will come and work to have your back. I'm confident of that. So thanks.
Yep. Any other examples or questions?
I have a question, Jennifer. So on the grassroots, kind of in general, the grassroots. So recently, like everybody there, we had a contentious board meeting, and I'm new, very new. Like I got voted in, and next week they had we had our first meeting on health issues and how to reopen the schools, and obviously it was it was contentious. But I agree, majority of people probably were in favor of the health standards supported by county officials and so forth, and the state officials. But there is a small percentage that are against it. On doing these grassroots, what I actually went out and talked to everyone I know. I said, hey, attend the board meeting. Don't let your vote be drowned out by everybody else's vote. And I went to people, even though I knew they were, whoever I knew, whatever they were, I didn't even know which side of the issue they were on, but I said, attend the meeting, right? And they did, and it worked out pretty well. But the question is on the grassroots advocacy program. I guess I have not done anything, have not attended these workshops, which I will jump on one and see how it works. But how do you open up the community? But then again, how do you, I'm not going to say this the correct way, so I apologize, but how do you, I don't want to say, how do you keep up bad apples that just want to focus on negative issues all the day? Because it is a community grassroots thing, but you want to focus on the positive, not the negative stuff. And I guess, is that part of the program? You also don't want to, people say, you're being, not letting everybody participate, right, in the community, because as a board member, everybody has a voice. And even if you may disagree with somebody, you still have to bring their issue to the table sometimes. Did I make myself clear, Deb or Jennifer or Mark?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Thank you for the question. And I understand what you're saying. I get that question a lot about how do you build a grassroots coalition where there may be differing opinions or different viewpoints. So I do get that question a lot. And I'll say, even though you may get, and also with the grassroots advocacy program, our boards are somewhat, and the superintendent is in control of who they would like to be in the coalition. So it's all about like who you guys would like to reach out to. If you feel like this is a collaborative, productive community group that you feel like would help you in a certain area, or maybe they're specific to maybe the mental health space and they can help you in the mental health legislation, right? So I'm not saying that they will maybe always be at the table of those community groups, but maybe they're specific maybe they're helping you guys at one specific time with certain legislation. And also I'll say that even though there may be, like with the community groups, maybe there'll be some overlap in what you guys can do productively. And like I said, I think it's all about like building that two-way relationship, and just kind of like just in the education realm in general. Like I said, there will be differing opinions, and you might get, a community group that is completely opposite of what you guys are trying to do. But I'll say it kind of goes into like when you are building capacity, thinking about who you can collaborate with. And not that you will always be 100%, in agreement with every community members that you come across. But that is something that we specifically will go through in like the second workshop of, okay, like now you found these people, now how can we collaborate? Because I do hear that even in, even just during CASPA meetings, not every school board member is in agreement about legislation or policy. So I think it's a part of that conversation that needs to be had, of course, but also hopefully from the conversation of different opinions that you can collaboratively come to maybe some agreement. And I definitely feel that maybe in these times, it might be a little bit more difficult just because of all the controversial things that are out there. But that is something that we will do go through in the second workshop. And I feel like kind of those community members who are not aligned with how the coalition will go will kind of filter itself out also. That answers your question, Daniel.
Anything else?
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
So here's an opportunity for you. If you're looking for things that you can do, ways that you can learn more information, ways that you can learn about being an advocate, join us next week. We're back in person at the Mackinac Room in the House Office Building, which is across the street from the Capitol in Lansing. It starts at 8:30. Registration will open between 8 and 8:15. We'll wrap up between 1 and 1:15. And the purpose of the day is we're going to bring in a legislative panel. Currently, we have a Republican senator, a Democratic senator, and a Democratic rep who will be there. We're trying to confirm that Democratic or Republican representative. All of them have ties to either the Education Policy Committee, there's an Education Caucus, or one of the Education Budget Committees. So they all have some decision-making within the education world. So we'll have a panel with them where you'll be able to ask questions. And then we'll have a second panel later in the morning on teacher shortage. And we're bringing in someone from Public Policy Associates who has worked on some of the research of this issue, someone from the Michigan Educational Careers Association, a retired teacher, and someone from MDE to sort of talk about the shortage. Where are we at with it? As you all know, it's not a good place. And then what could we do going forward, and what sort of ideas do they have to try to mitigate that shortage? In between, you'll get another lovely legislative update and some talking points for your members. And then for those people that have registered for the event, we go out and invite your senator and representative to join us for lunch, and then connect you at lunch so that you can then use the information you've learned in the morning and share it with them over lunch and have those conversations. We also encourage you, as long as you're in Lansing, to go ahead and schedule meetings with your senator or representative's office in the afternoon. This House will be in session, so you will have to meet with staff. In the Senate, it'll be hit or miss if they have committees or not. We'll also give you a list of the committees that are meeting in case you want to see that process or there's something of interest there. So we bring you into Lansing, and we hope that you'll spend the day in the afternoon using some of the skills that we give you and some of the information we give you. You can register for that online on our MASB page or on the MASB/EVAKIT page. There's registration links on both. So we hope to see you next week. So as we wrap up, we want to make sure that some of these things are what's going to stick in your mind. How can you monitor K-12 legislation? How can you find out about it? As always, you can call us, but there are other ways we can help you. That it's important to get involved and advocate on education policies. As you all know, your budget is dependent on what the state does, and that is a huge part of your job. And so if you don't get involved in these policies, then you just have to react to them. We want you to reach out, communicate, collaborate with others, bring in those people that can be your third-party validators after a tough meeting, or that can make the phone call to the rep to say the same thing you're saying, but it's coming from a slightly different angle. Maybe your rep is a small business person, and when another small business person calls and says, support this bill or oppose this bill with the same talking points as the school, sometimes that gets through a little more because they feel a camaraderie there. And always build those relationships with your legislators. We know that they're termed out in 6, 8 years, but they can do a lot in those years. And the more you build that relationship and the more you become their expert, education expert, the better you will influence education policy in our state. And all of this builds into being an advocate for your district. Deshandra and I can talk all day to these people about what's happening out there and how this affects people statewide and what we need to talk about and what we need to address. But what really pushes people, what really changes minds are you. It is you talking to them and sharing your story and giving examples, and they will respond to that as well. We had one representative who was presented to our behind the scenes for a couple of years, and he says the same thing every time. When a superintendent calls, okay, fine. Part of his job that he's paid to do is to call the legislators. But when a board member calls, not only are they volunteering their time as a board member, but now they're taking more time and taking an extra step in reaching out. And that matters a lot more to him than a paid person who comes in to tell him what he should or shouldn't do. So keep that in mind and reach out, be that advocate for your district. Contact information, hopefully you know where to find us. And do you have any final questions before we wrap up for the day? Let me check the chat. See anything? All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on your lunch hour. I hope that this was informative and I hope you feel emboldened to go out there and contact your representative. The links in the chats are, we can get to you otherwise, or you can find them on our website to sign up for a GAP program. Make sure you're on News from the Capitol. And as always, just let us know if there's anything we can ever do for you. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you all.